Welcome to the Heart Place Hospital podcast, proudly brought to you by Heart Place Hospital, a New Zealand registered charity dedicated to supporting the mind, body and soul of every visitor. And today we meet Shannon Swales, a clinical psychologist, writer, speaker and compassionate guide through burnout, recovery and beyond. So Shannon knows burnout not just professionally, but personally, snap, and journey through career-halting exhaustion inspired her memoir, Nothing to Give, a psychologist's path back from burnout, and continues to shape her life's work. Through her Midlife Reframing podcast, therapy practice and workshop, Shannon helps others navigate burnout and rediscover meaning, purpose and vitality.
I think, my childhood, very, very insulated young girl, teenager, very much in my head. What I've come to know now, but quite a sensitive kid, but then I didn't have the language, had beautiful parents. They didn't have the emotional language, really, like a lot of us need that emotional guidance. But as a sensitive soul, and who was quite internal, I was really quite anxious, particularly in all of those social kind of situations and wanting to fit in and connect, but finding that really immensely difficult. I had a turbulent young adult years after I left the security of school, because school, I love to learn. I'm an avid learner, still am. I went into uni, but I wasn't ready. That was probably my first burnout. We didn't have the language around mental health, but it would have been depression. But off the bat of chronic stress, anxiety, found my feet with psychology. I really loved learning, really loved finding out about humans and making sense of them, because I really couldn't make sense of them or myself. And it really gave me the language and the wisdom, and I just kept following that breadcrumb. Unfortunately, I followed the breadcrumb without really being aware of my intuition and what I wanted and needed. So I ended up being a clinical psych, which isn't a bad thing, but that's been another transition for me to find myself as a psychologist or as a person working with, now midlife women who are burnt out.
I call people like you and me the bridges. So I feel like you needed to go into that clinical psych role to understand that's not what you're here to steward. That's not what you're here to steward. So so you're like the bridge between the two. And I just want to bring up, you use the word depression, which I still have this part of me that has a stigma around depression, and I've had moments in my life where I've spent in deep rest, I like to call it.
I suppose when we use that word depression, because it is a pathology and a diagnosis, that it does have that kind of like deficit kind of feel to it, and that's how it's being used. I like how you articulated it there, and I'm moving more towards that. And I do with burnout. I talk about burnout being a teacher, that she's here letting us know it's not a deficit. It's your body's wisdom, your body, mind and soul going, hello, something's not quite okay here. Same with depression, same with anxiety. They're just our body's wisdom letting us know, hey, something's not right. Yeah, they were letting me know, well, really, I see it as, it was in deep rest, definitely one. Everything came to a head. I know the date still, 25th of February, 2021. I was working as a clinical psych in private practice, very typical. Very much my system was not okay. She was screaming. My body spoke because I wasn't listening. And she pushed me to the point that I literally couldn't turn up to work. Like I turned up, but I left that day. From there, with a lot of turbulence and a lot of whirlwind, I made the commitment to have this gap year that turned into 2 years where I stood away from the helping profession. The gap year was really about doing the inner work to shed what was no longer serving me or never really served me. Systems and the culture in which we live in here and the systems in which we are exposed to education, tertiary education, medical psychology, all of that very do energy, very achievement orientated, very outcome orientated, and that was harming me. Understanding is more of the masculine energy of outcome, do, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it was completely out of whack. I find when you shed that stuff, you actually find what is like more like it's, I call it unlearning and a learning, but I think it's a unlearning and deconstructing, disconnecting the stuff that's no longer working. But I think then you can connect with the stuff that's actually intuitively in there, like your soul and what she wants, and you're listening and you're hearing and you're following that breadcrumb and seeing where that takes you. And I did work part-time in a teaching role eventually, but I was still, my primary focus in that gap year or two was me. Like I was doing that work because I couldn't do it while working because the system itself kept feeding that stuff that wasn't working. So I couldn't do it while in the system.
I call it the dismantling and the remembering. That's what I call it. I also see that it you know, we've had generations of this code. So, you know, 2 years really isn't that long, Shannon, for you to have had to have deep rest and really do the dismantling and the remembering, because that's a lot of code. I always when I talk to women in perimenopause, and not everyone has gone through motherhood, but we've all been through puberty. You think about going from that child body into that woman's body, or going into that woman's body into a woman carrying a baby. And so when you transition into those, you know, the day that baby's born, or the day you find out you're pregnant, everything changes. And then the day that you actually birth that baby and you hold that baby, you're a whole different person. Same with going from perimenopause into menopause. I just emphasize that it's just so freaking magical, that transition. You know, you've already had what I call the Mac trap message.
Very few moments pre-41, which is the burnout, the gap year, started from there. I'd be able to pick a couple of moments where I'd say my nervous system was at rest. But other than that, no. And the environments in which I was in, including family, including school, including and don't get me wrong, there was, you know, certainly safeness in them. I often talk about safeness like support, but like it's just like that energy, go, and it's like both parents were very, very achievement focused. Like it was just a lot of that energy, and it's now, and I'm very protective. I'm so protective. It's not funny, of my nervous system. Like it's like, you know, things I do now that a lot of people don't get. That's okay. It's not for you. You don't have to get it, but this is what I'm going to do.
My mantra around boundaries is boundaries are for me, not against other people. So, you know, me too, great parents, but very much that success was, you know, financial achievement and things like that. Now my boundaries, and I just voice it. I just say, hey, this is for me. This is my nervous system. I know I've now experienced the parasympathetic nervous system, and I really like it. And I want to spend more time in it and out of it. And then when I am, my body, you know, I feel longer, leaner, sexier, younger, more vibrant. I feel liberated. I feel deeply nourished, and I feel fully alive. And that's now my hypernormal. And I want to keep that. And to do that, I need to actually put those boundaries in place from heart, not how I was seeing boundaries put in place. So I think it's really important. This is what I love about your work is shining a light on people who have had the lived experience. So we can see there is hope, that we're the hope merchants and the love rock stars.
Lived experience is so important. I've known that from my own journey through mental health. Whenever I heard someone speak about it and speak from experience, how that gave me hope and gave me possibilities and gave me ideas maybe, or helped me connect with myself. And I wanted to be that for other people. I wasn't able to do that early in my life because I held a lot of shame around experiencing mental health conditions, or just not being able to cope. And so I didn't speak out about it, but now I do, because those people who have done that for me. And so I just want to share those stories, those wisdom. And I know it's not something that was really encouraged or supported from my psychology system. They don't, it's only, and even now so I felt actually one of the things, and I'm still coming to terms with it, still kind of tentatively branching into it. That was the most scariest part about sharing my story, was how was that going to land within the psychology industry? How will my fellow psychologists that I don't know, because the ones I do know, they're my people, they're safe in sharing this, and they shared their stories with me, but just the wider community, because as an industry, there's some wide views around sharing lived experience, and the majority shut that down and see that as a bad thing. I think there's a growing minority in our industry that's saying stuff that lived experience, peer support has its place and is important, to have within our healing spaces, within our growth, within the medicine we do, in the work that we do. Whether that's sharing our own lived experience or having that part of the integrative support, that's the biggest thing for me, I suppose, with going back in the industry now, is bravely, courageously, but at times still avoiding sharing that story and being part of that. Well, I'm just doing my thing over here, whether the industry comes with me or not, whatever, but I'm going to do it. I'll just move out of the industry if they don't like it. But lived experience matters. And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of clients, the reason they come to see me is because they've read my book, or they've connected with me on Instagram or listened to the podcast, and they're like, I could so relate to your story, or I could relate to Jackie's, or I could relate to all the other lived experience guests. And that's the thing that they love. They love that humanness. They love the the validity, the being seen, heard through other people. I'm a big advocate for lived experience and big advocate for self-disclosure, where it supports and helps the woman or anybody, in their journey.
Yeah. And I think, as we've dismantled and remembered, that is a remembering that's what the feminine did. We would meet in the moon cycles and actually share our experiences of the past month. They would actually share what they'd been through in that month. And I like to call it a quantum clearing. So actually share it in front of others. So get the energy out, the charge out. And I think that's who you are. I think that's...
Thank you. I love that. And it made me think, as you were sharing that in the work that I do, how that's a lot of I don't do, I do the stuff that I've been taught, the interventions and things like that, but I don't do unless it's something that the woman wants or needs, and it's choice. I might share, hey, I'm thinking this, what's your thoughts? But it's really about creating, first and foremost, creating a space for expression, for sharing what's there for them, whatever that might be, and for me to receive it, to provide that space that's received in what I like to call safeness, but a place in which that's not going to be judged, that's not going to be overanalyzed or picked at. It's going to be received, it's going to be held, it's going to be this might be the wrong word to use, but loved. It's
great word at my world.
Yeah, I feel very safe here to use those words. I always just, because I'm very much one of the approaches that very much is very connected to me is the mindful compassion. They have the mindful self-compassion, but I blend a bit of compassion-focused therapy in it, where they talk about the 3 flows. So there's compassion in from others to self, compassion out to others, but also compassion from self to self. So but I'm that compassionate other for them when I'm their therapist, that the space I provide that emanates from me is that. So when our stuff is heard, our experiences, our heart, our everything is held in that kind of compassionate space. Oh, it's so healing. And what you were sharing about those the moon gatherings, that's very much what those women are providing for each other and for that woman who shares. And that's where I want to go to, is providing more community spaces, not just the one-on-one, which is beautiful, but it's one-on-one. I want community, connection, collective.
Because Shannon, you're here for the many. You know, you didn't have that 2 years of dismantling of rest. We've done the gap year. Let's go to the book.
Oh, Nothing Left to Give, the title. That took a long time to get to, but it just really captured where I was at when that day. The book is a combination of the journal articles I journal. So when one of the things I promised myself very early on in being unwell and off work, or in this dismantling phase, was that I needed to connect with myself. I wasn't connected enough, and what I was doing was just a spewing of what I was feeling from my heart, what my mind was saying too. So Nothing Left to Give is all of the journal entries that I made in that first year, that gap year. So from February 21 and then December, when it was around that time that I started to notice some shifts. There was more there was energy renewal. There was some birth maybe happening. What I love, and this was my editor who suggested this, because she saw some wisdom that came out of every journal entry. She said, pop that in as like a wellness practice, because there is something you often did in each of those journal entries, whether it was a meditation, whether it was a walk in nature, whether it was using some of your wisdom from psychology, you know, to deal with that thinking mind. Put that in as a wellness practice, so the woman or whoever's reading it can choose to do it if they may or they want. But it's not a self-help book, it's a memoir. But I think she called it a memoir with a twist. Like, you know, like
I felt like it had tinctures in it, you know, like it had little bits of medicine. That's what I felt like it had when I read it. I sort of was transported back to when I had my mat trip moment, and I was having some talk therapy, and because I dismantled so much, I had to kind of find other ways of filling my care tank up. I remember always telling my talk therapist, I'd be like, I've been to Morning People, which was a dance, 6:30 a.m. dance, no drugs, no alcohols, in a nightclub with dance music. And I went I'd go by myself, and I would dance for an hour and a half. And I remember her going, wow, that's so cool. I'm going to tell other people about that. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Like,
I remember that part of your story because it was really eye-opening for me. And a dance, not that I do it in that way, but dances or just moving your body, because with emotions, you know, with what we're carrying, that movement, we know the proof's in the pudding, as I often say. If you're moving your body, dancing while listening to music, and you're noticing it's helping you, whatever, like however it's feeling, then that's
there's more. Like more of it. I mean, once again, we can go back to that women's circle, moon meeting with women. That's what we're doing. So it's a remembering. Once again, it's a remembering. We would dance, we would access, we would walk in nature barefoot, we would create, we would plait each other's hair, we would nurture one another, love giving people hope, because we can live in a really fear projected hopeless world, but when you see people like ourselves who have literally been landed on our butts, and then years later alchemizing that pain into purpose, and then being able to show up and have a sustainable life, and actually be thriving. I'm beyond surviving. I'm actually thriving. And pre my mat track, I was literally surviving.
I went to this talk. Well, it was a yarn circle with Aboriginal women, First Nations here in Australia. It was so connecting. It keeps coming up, this circle, and it's something I'm embracing more in and even in my one-on-ones. It's a circle. Yeah, it's a partnership.
Okay.
It's in my heart place, what's really coming up, and it's aligned with what we've been talking about. I've created an online circle, or it's an online space. I call it a community, but we do meet weekly in what I've called the Heart Space Circle. And this space, it's called Midlife Reclaimed Community. So it's an offshoot of my podcast, but a place in which where people might be needing more of that circle of wisdom from other midlife women who are stressed out, burnt out, and wanting a space where they can connect with themselves. A self-disclosure is important to me, where it might help. Well, I always have in my mind what might be useful or helpful. I think it's about getting to know the person who you're maybe wanting to work with or be guided by. So I do, share bits and pieces of myself. I mean, my book's out there, so I share. And it's funny when a woman comes to me for some one-on-one work or something, she's like, I've read your book, and on which I'm always deep gratitude for and hopeful that it's helped them in some ways. That's just what immediately, it's part of the partnership, as well, but
Definitely.
I'm not involved in the community, if that person's not able to get to know me, like in some sort of way, like we just create that power dynamic that's.
Yeah. And also I think healers don't necessarily heal other people, but they are examples of that healing is possible. So
I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Shannon. Looking forward to sharing this, and looking forward to part 2.
Oh, thank you so much, Jackie.
You're welcome.